Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in. People across the world. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Awesome podcast for you this week. Before I present the guest, I just want to point out a couple of things. As always, please subscribe, rate, follow the podcast. Helps grow the podcast. If you want to support the podcast, please go to Anchor. If you follow me on either social medias, Twitter or Instagram, you can go on the link tree, and that has all the different links from social media to YouTube to how to support the podcast. Even there is a link there to, if you guys are interested in creating a podcast for yourselves, there is a link there to Gumroad, and there's an A to Z guide on how to start a podcast. Literally everything you need from idea to execution, marketing, getting guests. It's got everything. So feel free to check that out. And yeah, follow the newsletter as well to get the latest updates on guests, on anything that we're going to be doing in the future, on weekly blogs, tips, insights, all that good stuff's in the newsletter. So please go subscribe. And that's it. Finished with all the preliminary stuff. Let me get right to the guest and introduce him. This week I have Phil Daru. Phil, for those of you who may not know, is a strength and conditioning coach, one of the best in the game. He trains guys like Hector Lombard, Dustin Poirier, and many other elite MMA fighters and other athletes from other sports. And actually, this was a first for me this week. He did the whole podcast from a chair in a tattoo shop, and he was getting his right arm tattooed, and he was doing the podcast with his left hand, and it honestly didn't seem to faze him one bit. He was cool, calm, collected, had his thoughts about him, had his wits about him, had the clarity, and I don't know, I've had a couple of tattoos done. I don't think I'd be able to do a podcast. That shit hurts, man. But he was not fazed in the slightest. He was amazing. Like the fact that he was able to do it and still give such an amazing interview. Hats off to him. Hats off to you, Phil. That is what I call multitasking. I hope to get to that level of multitasking one day. So Phil and I covered actually a lot of different things. Obviously, a lot of MMA stuff, but also how the transition happened to him from being an MMA fighter to a strength and conditioning coach, how he built his business, weight cutting, rest days, what you should and shouldn't be eating. Also a lot of technical stuff that he gets into, which far beyond my understanding, but really cool to learn from someone like him on how to improve a certain aspects, be it cardio or strength. And also we talked about him being a brand, how he built the brand that he did and built a community of people around him that love him and support him. And so there's a few tips for kind of up and coming entrepreneurs or people that want to build, a YouTube channel or a social media platform. And finally, we also talked about setting goals that are non-negotiable. Meaning it's non-negotiable. If you are setting this goal for yourself, you are achieving this goal. And he talked about some of the frameworks and processes that he has put in place for himself to achieve those things. So a lot of really good inspirational, motivational stuff. Also a lot of just real life practical things that you can implement into your day-to-day, and just timeless insights from someone who's been around in the game for a long time and has trained some of the best. So definitely amazing episode with a lot of good nuggets of wisdom. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce this week's guest, Phil Daru. Enjoy the episode, friends.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
All right, and we're live. Phil, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me. We just talked off air, but I'm getting a tattoo right now, so you guys get to see the finished product and as I'm going into it. So everything is coming.
Yeah, this is a first. I've never done a podcast with someone while they're getting a tattoo. You're definitely a multitasker, doing tattoos, doing podcasts, same time.
Yeah.
Straight to business, man.
I know, man. I have to do multiple things, especially on this day. This day is a day that I don't really coach as much. And it's probably the only day that I don't have like a full schedule. So I have to cram all the other things in as much as I can. But I'm glad we could do this, though. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you on the podcast. Are you excited for fight week? Are you pumped?
Absolutely. I think it's a long time coming. Two guys that are very well matched. I was just thinking about it on the way over here. It's like they're both in the prime of their careers. I've worked with Dustin well over 12 camps now, known him for, 5-6 years, and being able to see him get to this level and basically earn a spot to where he can get that strap wrapped around his waist is a blessing that I was able to be a part of it and still a part of it. And I'm excited for this weekend for sure.
Yeah. Dustin is, there's a lot of guys, I don't want to say specific names, but that people felt like, oh, maybe they don't deserve it, or maybe they took the shortcut, or maybe this just because they were popular, so they got the title shot or whatever, right? Or maybe they finished fights in crazy fashion. But yeah. Dustin really took the long road, really worked for every fight, every opportunity. It was just all grit and determination and perseverance. And I think that's why he's probably one of the most loved fighters in MMA right now. And Charles Oliveira as well. Like, it's very similar route.
Yeah. Like I said, it's evenly matched, but it's also like similar in all aspects. They started off young in the UFC, had trials, tribulations, had to battle back from losses, both of them coming up into another weight class. So it's very similar between the two. So it is going to be a great fight, but I know we're going to come out on top.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. I'm super pumped about the fight. Let's talk a little bit about you. So for people who may not know you, maybe you can give a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, man. Phil Daru. So I've been a performance coach for 12 years. Was a professional fighter myself. I also played college football. Started training young, around the age of 11 or 12 years old. Weight training, get myself ready for my sport. Fell in love with just being strong. Trying to be as strong and powerful as possible. Getting as much preparation as far as athleticism, getting myself ready for competition. And that's really what I liked about it, is more the push that I get and the drive that I get to utilize as far as, getting in the weight room and getting after it. And I took that over into my professional career, where as I was a fighter, I was like, okay, I need to make some money, because I think my first pro fight, I made $200 and I actually lost that trying to get back home. So didn't have money.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I gotta utilize my strengths here and the talents that God's given me, and start training people. So I started working with my teammates, and those are my MMA teammates. And then I started to develop a system to allow for an athlete of a mixed modality sport, mixed bioenergetic demand sport, to be prepared at all times, every day, because again, especially coming up, like, you're not in the UFC, you're not like a high, I would say an elite fighter. You don't know when you're going to fight. So you have to be ready at all times.
Yeah.
But putting together a solid system and methods that'll help aid in that was definitely something I had to look to. And so open up my own gym, because I was sick of just paying rent everywhere. And so I was like, all right, I should be my own business owner. Yeah. And open up my gym at 22 years old. Now, mind you, I had no business sense whatsoever at that point in time. I was putting money in shoe boxes. Let's put it like that. My soon-to-be wife at that time, she actually joined the gym when I opened it up. And she was like, she's 8 years older than me. So she had a little bit more business sense, a little bit more life experience.
Yeah.
She was like, man, you're great at what you do, but you got to get your shit together and get yourself a bank account. Like,
first things first.
Yeah. Like, but I didn't have, a business bank account. I didn't have anything really lined up. I was just like, all right, I'm going to open up this small little warehouse facility and just, run people through my workouts. And obviously it grew exponentially over a short amount of time, which was crazy to me. Started from 800 square feet, then increased, within 6 months, we went to 1,900 square feet. And then from there, within the year, 11,000 square feet, where I have over 300 members. We had a full cage in there, a ring. We had boot camps going on, strength and conditioning, everything.
Yeah.
And I was doing it all by myself for a good amount of time. At the same time, I was still trying to be a professional fighter. So run my own business, be a pro athlete doesn't go hand in hand. And one of those things are going to falter. So, unfortunately, like the first 2 or 3 couple of fights that I had as a pro, I ended up losing just from not being focused, not being able to train. So I got some good people around me to help take the load off my back, and then I was able to train and get back into a winning circle. But the accumulation of trauma to the brain, injuries that plagued me from when I was playing football since I was 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
Finally got that last hit and got kicked in the back of my head on accident, mind you, by a teammate. And I was like, man, I'm concussed. I knew I was concussed because, listen, when you play football, American football at that age, like, and they didn't teach us how to tackle back in the day, ain't right? Mm-hmm. So it's funny that, like, now they're so strict on all the things. I could have did that years ago and probably would have saved my brain.
Yeah.
But so I went to the neurologist and just tried to get checked out. And they ran some tests. They said, they found some beta amyloid plaques sitting in between the neurons. And the guy basically told me, if I don't stop by the time I'm 50, I'm going to have Alzheimer's or some type of bad case of dementia or something of that nature. And I need to use my brain, man. That's where my moneymaker is at this point.
Yep.
So I was like, I had a child on the way and I had a full business. So, it took me a couple of weeks to really like come up to the conclusion of, all right, maybe I need to put it down, put my gloves down and retire. So I ended up retiring, which gave me a lot of time on my hands to build my business and everything else. And a couple of years passed and I didn't want anything to do with MMA because same thing with football. It's like, I can't do it. So I don't want to be around it. I don't want to watch it. This was probably around 2014, 2015. And I just got sick of being away from it, actually. And so I called one of my coaches, Dean Thomas, who works for the UFC now, but he was a longtime UFC veteran, American top team coach. And, I called him. I was like, man, you got anybody that you would want me to work with? Because I got some time on my hands. Obviously, I'm not competing. I'm not fighting anymore. He's like, you know what, you may be in luck. So he gave me an opportunity and told me to get my resume together. Got that, brought that down to the headquarters of American Top Team and finalized and got the job. And that's when I trained Dustin Poirier, Hector Lombard, Tecia Torres, Dia Davis, and King Mo the Wall. That was in the first day and the first week of me being there. So I got thrown into the fight, but it was good because not only was I a fighter before and I used to, cross train, go down there a lot. This was something that I knew that I was really good at. So even though these guys are very high level and elite at what they do, I felt in my mind, I was at least at that level to be able to coach them in what I do.
Yeah.
Strength and conditioning. So, you fast forward 5 years later, have a couple of titles, work with so many high level elite athletes, which I'm blessed to say and very fortunate for that. Was able to win a couple of awards. Nominated for a lot, and now open up my own facility again down south, which is near the headquarters. So like a lot of the fighters come there, and now I'm working with other genres of sports and also celebrities too as well. So things kind of went full circle. That's kind of like a short version of my life, but kind of.
Dude, I love that story, man. There's so many people that put stuff off because I can't do it right now. I don't know how to do it. And I love that you just at 22 were like, no, fuck it. I'm gonna build a gym. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna, create a financial success or path for me to do. But I'm interested in, usually fighters end up becoming coaches in the sense of, like a Muay Thai coach, a BJJ coach, all around, but you went in a different direction. You were in strength and conditioning.
Yeah. Well, it kind of, it went full circle because at the same time, like I've been intrigued with strength and performance.
Yeah.
So I knew that I still had a lot to learn in the skills side of things. Right. So I was still like an up and coming pro. So for me to transition now, can I, teach individuals MMA? Absolutely. But my notoriety, my niche, just, surpassed all of that. And so I just stuck with my niche, and I knew what I was great at. And so when you have that self-awareness, I was able to capitalize on that self-awareness and do what I do best.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So take me through it. What does let's say, what does a fight camp look like, right? Like Dustin Poirier now, let's just take an example. What, 2 to 3 months, right? Roughly. What does an average day look like when you work with your athletes during a fight camp?
Yeah, I like to get them usually around 9 to 8 weeks out. 9 weeks is solid because then we can get a baseline understanding of where they're at.
Okay.
Run them through some assessments, get some evaluations done, whether that be to find out, what their limitations are from a endurance standpoint, what their strength limitations are, all of that. Find out what the game plan is. Look at the opponent, look at them. Try to communicate with the skills coaches as much as possible to see what the game plan is and where they need improvements on when it comes to athleticism, when it comes down to physical preparation. Then from there, we usually start to run into what's called a condensed conjugate program, which is what I started to implement. It's actually started with the old conjugate method, which is something I took from Louis Simmons, which is one of my mentors. And I took the 4-day model and condensed it into 2 and 3-day models because at the end of the day, we don't have that much amount of frequency with the athlete because they're doing so many different demands, right? They got jiu-jitsu, they got Muay Thai, they got boxing, they got to put it all together in sparring. So with MMA, there's so many different training practices that they go through on a daily basis. So we have to make sure that we maximize our time. And so that's why I decided to condense the conjugate model to allow us to have a concurrent approach so that they're getting ready at all times and be ready. And then also there's no delineation of strengths. So 8 weeks out to 6 to 5 weeks out, we're going to be running more of a sub-max, maximal effort type work and then doing some dynamic effort on that same day, but we're going to switch it up. So they're going to be broken up into 2 quadrants of the body. So if I'm doing a max effort lower body, I'm probably dynamic upper body. So that way they get both sides of the force velocity curve worked on, and they're not missing anything. Now, when you get to about 5 weeks out, I like to give them a structured deload because that's when camp starts to pick up drastically, right? And so I don't know how deep in detail you want to get with the science on it, but for the most part, we're trying to bring down volume. We're trying to bring down some intensity so that the body can recover, right? You get that super compensation effect and allow for the body to absorb all that strength and all of the abilities that we've gained through the past training and take it into the final stages of the camp, which is 4 to, right around 1 week out. And from there, it's all about the speed of the sport. So everything is directed or specified to the athlete's game plan. So if it's speed, if it's power endurance, and then also depends on what athlete it is. Like, are they a stand-up guy? Are they a ground guy? Things like that. And we can take that into account and work on specific exercises that match the training or match the demands that are going to be placed upon inside the fight. And, about 1 week out, that's when we usually taper off everything and they're going to be doing their weight cut. Yeah. So weight is kind of getting a stimulus, like a neural stimulus to maintain their strength and their speed, but not go crazy with high volume or high frequency because, again, we want to bring down stress to allow their body to let go of the weight.
Yeah. How do you feel about weight cuts? Because, most guys seem to be okay, but then you'll see some people, man, like both guys and girls, that they just look like death when they're on the scale, and some they barely make it to the scale. Like I remember I saw a video a few years back of Darren Till. I think he was cutting to 170, and he literally crawled out of the sauna, just flipped on his back. He looked like he was about to die. And there's just, and forget all that's horrific. And like the fact that you have to do that. But when I always see it, I'm like, you have to be in peak performance in 24 hours, 48 hours. Like there's no way that's beneficial to the body to go through that. Right.
It's definitely not. You're losing some performance for sure. The guys that have crazy weight cuts, the guys that have to get down, and it's unfortunate because the weight limits are so spread apart in MMA, where boxing is different. So guys that are like my size, I'm 5'8", and I walk around at like 205, right? But when I fought, I had to be 155. So naturally, if you're muscled up and you have, very low body fat, it's a little bit more difficult, but you're smaller in structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough beat, so you got to be able to have an understanding of your diet. You got to know your basal metabolic rate. You got to know your caloric intake from, your training. So it needs to fuel your training. And that's primarily where we see the biggest difference is that, when you get down into the, closer to camp, down closer to the fight, their calories are very low.
Mm-hmm.
Energy is very low. Carbs are down so that they really can't fuel themselves. So I like the guys like Frankie Edgar, and a couple other guys that are like closer to their weights so where they don't have to kill themselves. I mean, Colby Covington's another one. He can fight at 155, but he chooses not to because of the fact of what I talked about.
Yeah.
So they cut as much, you don't have to lose that performance. Now, are you probably going to come in a smaller guy? Maybe, but are you willing to, take that risk? In a sense, not really a risk because you still have your performance that you had, as opposed to that guy that's cut massive amount of weight. Yeah, he may be bigger, but he may not have the abilities like you do on fight night.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you an advocate for more weight classes?
I am.
Would you like to see more?
Yeah, I definitely do. I like to see. I like to see somewhere around like the 170 to 185 is a big one. 185 to 205 is really big too as well. So
yeah,
something in between there would be good for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's guys like off the top of my head, if I had to think, like Kevin Gastelum, right? Like he's a little too small for 185, and he just can't seem to make 170. Like I think he missed weight a few times, and for 170, I don't know, like he would be a perfect fit if he could make that. But it just seems like such a massive weight cut for him that, again, like you said, performance-wise, I don't know how he would do because he would be cutting so much on the night of. Or prior to, sorry.
Definitely. I think, well, I was able to work with Kelvin prior to his 2 fights ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time I'm meeting him. And I walked in, I thought he was going to be bigger, right? And he's a super nice guy and very athletic and obviously a really good athlete as far as a fighter goes.
Sure.
I thought he was going to be at least, 6 foot. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he was my height, and I was like, man, you fight at that weight class, at that, and again, he's not like a very muscular guy. He's stocky, but he's not like a Hector Lump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a difference there. I'm like, you definitely have a lot more room to cut down, with the amount of weight that he has on him that's not real functional. Yep. And I know like the argument of like Daniel Cormier and everything else, like. Because Daniel Cormier might be good at a weight that actually you can see his abs. You know what I mean? So
DC's chunky though, man. DC's chunky. He's but he's fast. He's super fast, man. I remember seeing him fight Stipe, and when he lets off that jab, I was like, Jesus, dude, like he's a fast dude, and he's small. Like I remember seeing him like next to Max Holloway, and Max Holloway is like taller than him.
Yeah, Max is big. That's what I'm saying. Khabib is big. Right? Really? You got these that are fighting at 55 and 45 that are bigger than guys at 185 and 205.
It's crazy. Yep. I love how you're just like getting attacked. Like this guy's literally like digging into your arm there, and you look like you're in a spa, just relaxing, like nothing's bothering you. Yeah,
I'm used to it by now. The
State
ribs,
of mind, right?
I wouldn't have been able to do this interview if he was hitting my ribs, though. I'll tell you that right now.
I did one on the ribs when I was like 21 or something like that. Oh, it was brutal.
How big was it?
Like all across. It wasn't massive, but it was just up and down, like through the whole side. And so it was, the whole thing was literally on the ribs. Not fun.
No, it's definitely not. Definitely not. I had to sit through it for like altogether 12 hours.
Oof.
And he's got to do my other side like that. So I got to get ready for it.
It's all mental. It's all mental.
Definitely.
So you work with a lot of different athletes, some celebrities too, but are MMA fighters a different breed in your opinion? I mean, maybe not. Like you see how other athletes are as well, but I just feel like with the amount of different things that MMA fighters have to go through and techniques that they have to develop, it just seems to me like a different breed of and the toughness, obviously, that they, fighting with 4 ounce. You'll see fighters that like toes breaking, legs break, like shit's breaking, and they're just like, they continue.
You got to be tough. I mean, there's other sports that, I think rugby guys and hockey guys definitely have that.
Tough. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and as far as like, being disciplined, I've worked with some Olympian judokas that are very disciplined, more disciplined than a lot of the MMA guys and girls.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they just don't have to do a whole lot. Obviously, as far as like training different aspects, right? They're only doing, but the level of training is so demanding. Wrestling too, like wrestling, judo, any grappling sport, other than jiu-jitsu in a sense, because jiu-jitsu is kind of, more playful, and don't get me wrong, like I love jiu-jitsu and I respect all the jiu-jitsu practitioners.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more laid back than like wrestling and judo. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that they got to worry about. There's a lot of people that they have to, work with. Mm-hmm. And so, I guess personalities and, being able to turn it on and off in a sense and switch gears. Wrestling mentality is different than a jiu-jitsu mentality, right? Just like we talked about. A Muay Thai mentality is different than a boxing mentality. It really is, because you're aggressive. You're really aggressive in Muay Thai. But in boxing, it's more sweet science. You have to be a little bit more elusive. You have to be able to make them miss. Whereas like Muay Thai can be like, all right, you hit me, I hit you type stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I love Muay Thai. There's probably not one thing, but because everything's important, obviously, especially if you want to create the ultra athlete, the Superman type version of what a fighter can be. But if you had to choose, what would you say is maybe the most important attribute a fighter can have? Is it mental toughness, speed, strength, distance management, cardio, something else?
Yeah. It's funny. I had a conversation with one of my boxing coaches, and I was asking him about boxing, like what's the biggest thing that you would see from a mental standpoint? Because we do know you hit it on the head. It's mental toughness for sure. Like they have to be able to get hit in the face, and not be phased or not want to kill the guy or girl afterwards. Like you got to be able, like with my teammates, we beat each other up on the daily, but we would go out to eat afterwards, So it's really just a level of understanding that this is a sport to a degree and you're all trying to get better. Now, in the fight, you can't be totally all out aggressive. You have to have controlled aggression. So you have to control your emotions. You have to control your mind so that, you can stick to the game plan or have the ability to react and process this information so that you can put yourself in a good position to strike or to land shots or to take down or whatever the case. And you got to be calm, but you also have to have the ability to turn on when it's time to turn on and block out all of the negative aspects of the fight game, all of the distractions, especially inside the fight, but outside of it works. So that was one thing that like, I know the elites do really well is they're able to block out the distraction and process information as much as possible to allow them to do what they need to do in there, and showcase their abilities. The ones that are really good in the gym, but they can't put it together, when it counts, is they lack that ability to block out all of the distraction.
Yeah.
Not comfortable in that environment. They're comfortable when they're comfortable in their own environment, they're great. They're like Anderson Silva, but you put them in an environment where it's not something that they're used to and all things go wrong, so that's really what it is. What makes a fighter one of the elites, as far as that goes. And then, all the other athletic abilities, especially when it comes down to cognition, I think that the mind is even more important. Like I said, processing, reaction timing, being able to decipher things, like see things before it happens, be a good chess player, not a checkers player.
Yeah. It's true, man. I had Kenny Florian on the podcast. I think it was last week. And he said something very similar. He was saying how there is not enough emphasis on the mental aspect of the game, and there's too much emphasis on the physical aspect of the game. And he thinks that should be not necessarily flipped around, but definitely more emphasis on the mental aspect.
Yeah. I think it's just because, the sport is still very new. We got places like the UFCPI. I'm trying to do a lot of things down here when it comes down to process and elimination. And we have a guy that I work with that I actually went to school with. His name is Nick Davenport, and he works with pretty much all my guys. So, he's worked with Dustin, he's worked with Joanna, he's worked with King Mo, and we do something called cognitive conditioning, which is really important, man, because at the end of the day, like, they can beat themselves up physically all day long. It gives them the ability to train something that's not going to beat them up physically, but they can still train.
Yeah.
So if it, like, let's say, for instance, we're doing a deload week, we can really put true emphasis on the cognitive side of training as opposed to the physical side. And that just kind of sets them apart. That was something that we try to implement. We started implementing with Dustin right before the Anthony Pettis fight. And he actually came to me because he saw Lomachenko doing it. And so I was like, actually, I got a guy that does the exact same thing, and he's right here. He's like, all right, perfect. And Nick's, and like, I guess it was Nick's lucky day, because that same day that I told him to come see me, the UFC countdown was coming in to showcase his training. So he got his thrusted into the limelight in a sense,
Yeah.
It does work.
Awesome. Love it. Could you take someone and I'm just taking Conor as an example, I don't mean to shit on him or anything, but can you take someone like Conor McGregor, who historically tends to fade as the fight progresses, right? And make him into a cardio machine like Tony Ferguson or Max Holloway? Or are there certain abilities that people are born with that are just talents, gifts, right? Like there's, I was watching this documentary, I think a couple of weeks ago. This guy, Nimsdai Purja, I believe his name was, and he climbed all the top 14 highest mountains in record-setting time. I think the prior record was 7 years. He did this in 6 months, right? Just smashed the record. And his ability to have oxygen in his lungs at those highest elevations is something that's very unique, right? He was born in Nepal. He's got, they're just built different. So I wonder if that is that transferable to MMA? Is there nothing Conor can do to make him a cardio machine like Tony Ferguson, or are there things that people can change about themselves?
There is a definite genetic limitation, or a genetic ceiling to your VO2, which is your ability to take in oxygen maximally. But there is ways to train it to where you can be efficient with your limitations. So his main limitation may not be his ability to deliver oxygen. His main limitation may be, his respiratory rate, like how well he takes in or breathes in O2 and lets out CO2. And I would be willing to guess and to bet that that's his limitation because of his postural issues, right? You look at the way he stands, and that was one thing that I can see with Dustin too as well. And if you ever notice, Dustin, people think that he's exhausted or hanging his head, but he's actually trying to get more oxygen in and letting off more CO2 when he goes down to his knees, where he's holding down to his knees and he's bent over.
Yeah.
Allows him to feel more diaphragmatic breathing. So now he's getting more air into the diaphragm. It's actually easier for him to get in oxygen and let off CO2. So they've done studies on that, which is actually more beneficial. Now, does it look bad?
Gracie just came out with a book about that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nothing new in, I would say, sports science world. It's nothing new in jiu-jitsu, where they've been doing it forever. Gracie's been doing it long before everybody even knew about it. But now it's coming more to light because, other sports are starting to take to it.
Yeah.
And now it gets more recognition when football and basketball and all those hot, those, I guess, more prevalent sports, in the world, they adopt that, So, another thing is again, we talk about the mental side of things. He's very explosive to a degree. He has power in his shots. I'm pretty sure he utilizes oxygen, very well, but it's just his ability to, again, get that back in. And so that has to do with the mentality of your game plan. Like, anxiety is also another thing. I think that he's so good and been so good. And we saw it in the first Nate Diaz fight.
Yeah.
He was basically starching guys, putting them away easy and early, So when he got faced with a little bit of adversity and found that he couldn't put away Nate as easy as all the other opponents, that kind of, that shook him up a little bit. Now, I'm just saying this, I'm totally out of context. I don't know, but that's something that, looking in on it, I could say, oh, that might be it, because if you look at all the past wins, they were pretty easy. He pretty much picked everybody apart.
Yep.
Now you look at, like, okay, you fast forward and you go, even though it's a boxing match, it's Floyd Mayweather, and he's boxing. And so he's getting touched up.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that drains energy. Every time you get hit, you drain your energy. So that may be it too. But I wouldn't know. I don't want to, again, jump to conclusions or anything like that. But I would be willing to bet that it has something to do with a respiratory limitation or something along the lines of a mental, I guess, lag, and it's the inability to withstand some of that pressure.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because he's one of the biggest known or most known athletes in the world. You would think that wouldn't faze him, but I think it has to do with him not wanting to look bad either. But that, again, I'm just speculating.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, there's so many. It's layered. There's so many different things. But for me, like, even with standing cardio, I'm just trying to figure out, like, can you take a something that someone else is born with that seems to be a natural gift and implement that into yourself? Like, could I take Max Holloway, right, who's just a volume puncher, and make him punch like Conor McGregor, where, like, a touch of death, right? Like, he touches someone, they go to sleep. Or could I take someone, maybe, I don't know, that's not as fast and make them as fast as Demetrius Johnson, right? Like, could I take someone that just has this rare ability and could I transfer that on to someone else just by repetition and training?
Yeah, this is like a big debate in a lot of, like, old school MMA and boxing, enthusiasts, saying that you're born with knockout power, you can't make knockout power, but I do believe, and that doesn't make sense to me, because you can train speed. You can train to get faster, right? Whether you improve technique or you improve your rate of force, you improve all these things from a physical standpoint, you get stronger, hands down. Like, that's basic physics. You're going to improve on being more powerful, being faster. Now, are you going to be like, a knockout artist? Maybe, maybe not, because there's all other factors in there. That's limb length, that's technique, that's precision, that's timing. All that comes into play. Unless you're Ngannou, who just touches people's pinky and puts them to sleep. But again, that's born, and then also trained, because he has the weight, he has the force. It's Newton's first law, right?
Yeah.
So, end of the day, I believe you can get better. I don't think that, like, you are at a genetic ceiling to where you have the most that you can get. We just hope that the most that you can get has the ability to give you knockout power.
When I was younger, I lived in Africa for a few years. And I'll never forget this. There was one day we were playing soccer for the US. We were playing soccer, and we kicked the ball into, like, this building that they were building just across the street. And there was a guy that worked there, right? He was just, laying bricks or whatever. And he kicked the ball to us. And I swear to God, he kicked that thing so high. I've never, like, he kicked it up to the sky. Like, he like passed it to God. It was so high up. And the guy next to me was like, dude, that's just African power, man. Like, I was like, yeah, Jesus Christ. Like, he wasn't a soccer player, but dude, I'm telling you, he kicked that thing just like natural ability, right?
Yeah, definitely. And, some people have more muscle fibers. They have the ability to just turn on their nervous system better, Over there is a great example. You got the best athletes in the world. Look at Jamaica's got the best sprinters, in a sense. I mean, you can make argument, but I mean, I do believe they do, obviously, with Usain Bolt. And then you have, world-class distance runners, you know, over there in Africa, you know what I mean? And in Indonesia and Miles. And Miles never get tired, you know? So there's definitely a genetic predisposition. Now, just depends on, like, again, it's self-awareness. What are you good at? Do you want to improve on what you're good at and make that like unstoppable? Or do you want to bring up those weak points? And I do believe when it comes down to a sport where you have so many different demands, you have to fill the gaps to a degree to where at least they're competent in those particular, you know, worlds of training and obviously performance. Yeah. So I think, you know, this comes to mind. Damn, I'm drawing a blank here. Mind you, I'm getting this.
Yeah. You're getting stabbed in the arm while we're talking. Yeah. You're doing very well.
Yeah. So GSP comes to mind, right? Not really good at anything, but I mean, well, not very great at one thing, but very good at everything. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, and that was because he understood, you know, what he had as far as an athletic ability. And so he tried to fill as many gaps in as possible. He didn't have a BJJ background, definitely didn't have a wrestling background, didn't have a boxing background. But if you look at it, everything that I just said, he's really good at. Mm-hmm. You know, so
if, let's say someone like myself, right? Like I've been doing Muay Thai for 15 plus years. And I've always been strong, but I've never had cardio. My cardio's always sucked. Someone like myself, right? Like, how do I improve my cardio? Is it through repetition, sprints? Yeah, like, what's the path forward for me?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down. I could give you a general approach. It's consistency over everything. You know, if that's something that you need to work on, that's something that you need to take and basically focus on that for a good amount of time. You're talking, you know, 6 to 8 months, maybe, you know, or even a year, where you're just solely focused on building your endurance. And again, there's so many different factors of endurance, right? Cardiorespiratory, you got, you know, your utilization, you got a bunch of different things, like your lactate threshold, all of that, your ability to buffer out lactate, but all comes down to having the ability to take in oxygen. So you need to improve upon your heart, you know, your ability for your heart to pump blood throughout the entire body, right? And you need to increase your lung capacity. So the best move for you from a cardiorespiratory standpoint is to run, or not run, but do some form of aerobic training.
Yeah.
To allow yourself to have a base that's going to take care of all the other demands of your energy system training.
Well, my wife and I just moved to Denver like 2 months ago. So we're a mile high now. And before that I was in New York. So flat, obviously sea level. And I'm very interested. And, you know, I've been training a lot here and going on hikes on like 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 feet. So everything's up in elevation. I'm super interested to see, you know, if I go back in 6 months or a year back to New York and train, like, how am I going to feel?
Oh, you'll definitely feel a lot better. You know, you'll have the ability to breathe better, which is important, right?
Yeah.
Your lung capacity will be higher. I would be interested to see, like, you know, check when you go up and then you like you're doing your workouts. I would get something like a pulse oximeter and check your SpO2.
What's
right?
SpO2?
So your oxygen levels, right?
Okay.
So like, you want to stay. Usually, you want to be around 98%, right? But if you get that, if you're up in the high altitude, you can bring your oxygen levels down to anywhere around 70 to 60%. And that's very low, right? That's damn near passing out. But that gives you an adaptation, right? Because your body is able to cope with not having that amount of oxygen. So when you do get it in sea level, you're like, damn, like I can breathe, I can move, and it's just a whole lot. But that's why a lot of guys go to Colorado to train, you know, to get that high altitude training, because it increases the VO2 max.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see, I guess, when I'm back at sea level at some point next year. I don't know. We'll see. What do you use for motivation? Because obviously, like, for anyone who's listening, they can go check out your Instagram. You're a machine. And, I think for a lot of us, it's also interesting what you said, right? I think when people hear they have to commit to something for 6 months or 8 months or a year, they're like, oh, Jesus, that's a lot. Like, isn't there like an overnight fix? We all want an overnight fix, right? And there's so many things now that are like advertised to us as overnight fixes, right? Whether it's a service or a product or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's usually not the case. Usually it's the long road that you have to take. But just what do you use for motivation? Because sometimes it's cold or maybe not in Florida, but the rest of the country, it's cold and you're under the sheets. And you know what? Oh, dude, come on. We got 30 degrees out here. It's actually not that cold in Denver, surprisingly.
Yeah.
New York's much colder. But I don't know. Is there like a framework that you've developed over time to keep you motivated, to keep the people around you motivated, or I don't know? Yeah.
To keep the people around me, I lead a lot of people. I have 3 businesses. I mentor over 1,000 coaches. So hopping on phone calls with them and just finding out what their why is. That's always important. I think that for me, the people that put their trust in me, that look upon me for guidance, for help, that's my motivation to a degree. But motivation really doesn't mean anything. That's based upon that. So everything that I do is just it's more of like a system, and I have structure and I have a plan. And when you have a plan, you can't deviate from that plan, where every day is just, okay, there's non-negotiables. And so when you do that, it's not about motivation. It's just, that's what you have to do, So it's your discipline to get the job done based upon the structured schedule that you put together. And then there's really no thinking about it. You just don't have, you have no choice. When you have no choice, then it's just routine.
Yeah.
And when it's routine, it accumulates over time. So consistency builds up. So, everybody now and again needs some form of motivation. But like I said, to keep it going for a long duration, to keep it consistent, you have to have a schedule. You have to have a planned attack. And you can have that. Motivation isn't as necessary as people think.
I love that. Non-negotiable. So this is just like eating or taking a shower, or it's a non-negotiable. It's something that I have to incorporate into my day. There's no non-negotiable. I like that.
Yeah, it's actually written on my wall. I have like 4 schedules. So I have a full planner, like in written form. I have a schedule planner on my phone, on a whiteboard, and then I share it with everybody that that needs to see it. Now, the good thing is that it's always in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
What non-negotiables are looking at me on a daily basis. Everywhere I look at my phone, it's there. I go into my books of notes, it's there. If I go in my garage, it's in my whiteboard, it's there. If I go to my office, it's on the whiteboard, it's there. Mm-hmm. So there's no way that I can be like, oh, I forgot about that. Or, when they're non-negotiable, that means you cannot negotiate out of them. You have to do it. No ifs, ands, or buts. And so for that allows you to stay consistent, like I said. And ultimately, what I found was that, and people say, do you have like a vision? Do you have goals for the future? Like, yeah, I have goals, but I'm not focused on the goal. I'm just focused on the task. And if I can accumulate the work and just keep going with my tasks that I have every day, every week, every month, every year, it's going to get me to where I need to be. So I'm just following the path, and I'm making sure that I put one foot in front of the other. And I keep doing that. Eventually, I'll find the destination.
Yeah. So you take big goals, break them down into daily goals, right? Like, okay, my X goal for, I don't know, whatever, let's say 2022 is this. How do I do it? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, break it down 365 days and just take it one day at a time. Instead, because I feel like for me sometimes, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people, that you'll have big goals and you're like, oh shit, how do I even achieve that? Like, where do I start? But if you break it down, it just seems much more reasonable and much more feasible for you to do.
Yeah, I think people go wrong with putting together astronomical goals, and everybody's very enthusiastic in a sense and wants to make it big.
Yeah.
And it's always good to have that. Like, I don't say, look, never not shoot for the stars, but at the same time, you have to be realistic in the approach. So like, and I do, I fell victim to that a couple of times, a lot of times in my life. And I just learned from them, you know, because you got to look at, okay, scheduling, you got to look at timing, you know, that those play a big role. It may not be that, it may not be time for that at this point. You know what I'm saying? Because if you can't do it 100%, then don't do it at all. My grandmother used to tell me all the time, man, if you can't do it, if you can't do it right, don't fucking do it at all. And she used the word well. So
she was emphasizing that.
Exercising it since I was, 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
And so it's like, man, listen, you have to take pride in your work. And if you're not put in the position to allow yourself to do that, then it's not going to be beneficial for you, for anybody that you have helping you. So you need to make sure that you have the right goal in mind and know what your opportunities are and what the time is. For a lot of things, it is just being patient and having great timing. For me, it's just like, okay, just put your head down, keep working, and things will open up. Now, you have to be smart with what you work with, because anybody can work hard. Mm-hmm. You work hard at mowing lawns, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with mowing lawns, but I'm not trying to be the best lawn mowing guy ever. That's not my goal. You see what I'm saying? So just find out what exactly you need to work hard at and just put your head down and keep moving forward.
Yeah. So do you put any weight on rest days? Or like,
absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I was like, no off days,
Yeah.
Go, you know what I mean? And even shit, that was one of the sayings in my gym. It's like, go hard, no off days, right? Getting older, having kids and understanding the body and understanding stress and cortisol and all of that and just mental clarity. You do need that time to sharpen the sword. You need that time to reevaluate, decompress and get back to, the goal at hand. So it's definitely important for consistency, for persistency, to allow yourself to take a short break along the path, take a piss break, I say.
Yeah. No, because now it's right. We're doing, there's the company 8 Sleep, and we're putting a lot of emphasis on sleep and getting all the stats during your sleep and REM sleep and all the different things. And, I actually had the founder on the podcast, and he doesn't even like look at themselves as a bed. It's athletic recovery company. Because he was saying that essentially like the bed is one of the best ways to get recovery if you have a really deep sleep, et cetera. And then there's, a plethora of other things, right? From cold immersions to, I don't know, yoga and meditation and a bunch of other things that people say help them recover. So I think, like you said, just like before we're talking about the physical and the mental, it seems like there's more emphasis on recovery today than maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and that goes to show like the emergence and like the notoriety, well, not the notoriety, but just the level of sports science that's coming out. Mm-hmm. Everything that's coming out now, we're putting more emphasis on that, but just health and longevity. So you got a lot of smart guys that are life hacking, that are seeing it like that. And so I think Ben Greenfield's a big one. I think that all these little things here and there, a lot, because people just want to feel good, man. Like at the end of the day, people want to feel good.
Yep.
So you got to look at it from the inside out. What's going on? And if it is as simple as you just getting more sleep, is so that you could be more productive when you wake up, then absolutely make it happen. It's the easiest thing that you can do. It's the I don't know. When you talk about like what can you do quick to increase your productivity, is to get more sleep. You know what I mean? So that's the intervention you need first and foremost. And then obviously nutrition plays a role in that, supplementation, decrease in stimulants, getting away from stressful environments, those things right there do play a big role as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about nutrition a little bit, because I've had a lot of people on the podcast, from athletes to scientists to, I don't know, people who have changed their health habits because they've had maybe some disease and they had to completely change how they eat. And obviously I listen to a lot of influential people in this space as well, right? Joe Rogan. And I used to be vegan for a long time, so I used to listen to a lot of people who were vegan, not vegan anymore. And I don't think I've ever been more confused, right? Because there's just so much, dude, there's so much information, misinformation and disinformation and things that overlap. And I don't know, I think like I've reached a conclusion, and you can tell me what you think. You have obviously much more knowledge on this. This is just what's worked for me. I've kind of I'm somewhere in between not listening to anyone and listening to everyone and just picking what works personally for me. Like I thought for the longest time, vegan was the best thing for me. And honestly, like the reason I stopped was not because of anything else, rather than I just wasn't feeling like I was at my best. Yeah. And once I started losing some things and incorporating a few other things, I was like, dude, I actually feel so much better. Like all the people that were saying that you should eat this way and that way, I'm sure that was working for them, but not necessarily for everyone or personally for me.
Yeah, you're right. Like it's trial and error. You know, you got to see what works for you 100%, you know, and sometimes it's more of like, you know, people like the fad diets because they get stuck in, okay, this is what I got to do. I'm going to follow this to a T because there's no thought process behind it.
Yeah. And they take it as Bible. They take it as an ideology sometimes.
Well, because they want to be a part of something.
Yeah.
They want to, you know what I mean? I'm vegan or I'm carnivore or, you know, whatever. But, you know, those minimal diets that, you know, keep a lot of things out don't last long. And if you do them, you should cycle on and off of them, you know? And I mean, I've done vegan, I've done carnivore, I've done it all. I've done, you know, keto, I've done it all. But what I found was they're not sustainable for the long haul, especially if you're trying to be active, you know? And again, you can manipulate it and, you know, I've done intermittent fasting, I've done long-term fasting, I've done it all too as well. The one thing I will say is that, you know, you go back to somewhat of just a balanced diet, you know, and you got to figure out, you know, what are the fuel sources that you need for a particular event, whether it be training, whether it be studying, whether it be just kind of, you know, or just having like just better mental clarity, putting those things in, and then your ability to assimilate those nutrients and digest the food is very important, because if you can't digest it, well, now you have inflammation buildup, you have brain fog. You obviously, you know, you got gut inflammation, you got gut problems, you got problems going to the bathroom, and that leads to other things, IBS and colitis and all these other issues that may arise. And so the best thing for you to do is to be your own science experiment, you know, out what works, eliminate the stuff that makes you feel like shit, and then go from there. And then it may be real minimalistic, right? You may not be able to take in, you know, massive amounts of carbs and things like that. And you may not need them because you may not be training like an MMA fighter. But, you know, and notice how I said that. You know, and I think that there's a huge emphasis on, I want to be a part of this, I want to be a part of that. And so people get married to that. It's the same thing with, you know, with everything, man. It's
politics, everything.
Politics, religion, everything. Everybody wants to be a part of something, but you got to be a part of what you feel is perfect for you, you know, and do what you feel is necessary for you. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, you know, I'm doing, you do vegan, but you feel like crap. What's the point of doing vegan?
Yeah.
Why you started? Because you want to be, you know, I want to say I'm vegan. Come on, man. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. For me, like, you know, at the time, again, I wasn't feeling well, like, because I was just eating crap. And then started watching a lot of documentaries, and everyone there is kind of like glowing, and they're telling you how amazing it is. And forget like the environmental and ethical standpoint. That's a different story. But just as far as nutrition and health, and I was like, I want to look like that. I want to feel like that. You know what I mean? I want to go like Rich Roll and do ultra endurance marathons. Not that I probably can with my shitty cardio, but. But, you know, you get sucked into it, and it's not a bad thing. It's not like there's some like hidden bad agenda behind it. It's just, it is what it is. And you do have to test it out for yourself. And for me, like, you know, like I said, for years, and I just found out like after a long time of trial and error that it just wasn't optimal for me.
No. And again, it's not a long-term thing, you know. It's always good to experiment, you know, and see, you know, and then you can go back to it. Like I tell a lot of my guys, like, you want to do intermittent fasting, fine. You feel like it helps you, fine. If you have limited time to eat, absolutely, that may that may be something that you want to throw in there. But it's not an all day. It's not a day of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't do it every day of the week. And even guys that actually preach intermittent fasting, they tell you don't intermittent fast every day of the week. So, but people take it to extremes.
What have you found that works for you?
Just a balanced diet, man. Just finding out, right now, I'm one is understanding your hormonal levels, because that dictates a lot of things. It's not just calories in. I know a lot of people have that misconception. There's a lot of people out there that say, oh, it's all about the calories, but it's really not, when you have those underlying factors of cortisol and thyroid and your metabolism and all these things that you have to take into account when you're trying to put in fuel sources to allow you to perform and to live. So I like to first find out, where my levels are, get a complete blood panel done, check my cortisol. So I do like a Dutch test for that, which basically you'll find out everything: your thyroid, your metabolism, your testosterone, your estradiol, all of that. And then also it sees where your cortisol rhythm is. And so, because
is that like a little thing you could do at home, or do you have to go to like a lab and do it?
Yep. You can do it at home. It's a urine test, and you do it 24 hours. So it's like four samples, and you let it rest overnight. Then you send it back in, and they give you the details. And it's very deep, detailed out process. Like, you get to see everything, which is awesome, and then you get to see like blood markers of like, okay, are you at risk of an autoimmune disease? Are you at risk of like so many different things? So I like to put some of my clients on there, especially my older clients. I have a lot of high level, like I have a lot of celebrities that are older, 50s, even almost going up into their 60s. So got to make sure that that's on point, and that kind of dictates what their caloric intake is going to be, what their supplementation is going to be like, what their sleep level needs to be like, and what their training is going to consist of. So all these things come into play. It's not just like a black and white thing, especially when you have people that are pushing it to the limit. You got to see where they're at from the cellular level, and making sure that everything is appropriately put in for those people to be optimal throughout the day.
Yeah.
What I found was that, growing up in the sport, especially like MMA, I had to make weight. So like I would go super low carbs, and then I found out that like it buried my metabolism, because I was actually low calories at that time. So I was doing a lot of protein, but not a lot of fats and not a lot of carbs. And that's like the worst thing you could do, but then again, I'm 20 years old, 21 years old. And when I start to learn more about nutrition, I start to understand, okay, and I'm not by any means like the nutrition guru, but there's certain things that you need to know as far as, just from your own preparation and then preparing other individuals, that you want to have this solid understanding. And now learning from guys that take it to the next level, more like functional health practitioners. That's really where I started to level up and to get those tests like the Dutch test and the full blood panel and figure out what's going on. Obviously you want to get their basal metabolic rate. You want to get a DEXA scan done or something along the lines that can show you where their body fat is, where their lean mass is. And then you can coordinate the nutrition based upon that.
Yeah. Well, when you're 21, you can eat wood chips and you'll be fine the next day. It's just like, dude, you're invisible when you're 21. And you get to like in your 30s and you're like, Jesus Christ, like, oh, like I shouldn't have had an extra beer yesterday. But as far as diet, because most people, the overwhelming majority of people, they don't train like you and they don't have the lifestyle that you have. You're a machine. You're super active. Like you work out a lot and your job is obviously to be active as well. So there's like different diets, right? For like the person that is like yourself, that, that's just part of your daily routine. And then there's people that are maybe trying to lose weight. So they have to like formulate a different diet for themselves. Then you have maybe athletes during camp and they have to have a completely different diet. So it's just really super individual and based on, I guess, what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. I mean, there's not one fix all.
Yeah.
in especially in nutrition, man. It's so crazy. It's like, there's definitely not one fix all in strength and conditioning. And there's absolutely not a one fix all in nutrition and supplementation. So like, yeah, it has to be individualized a lot. So we take them, like when we do an initial assessment and evaluation, we'll take them to get their DEXA scan done. You know, this is fighters, but I usually do that with some of my high-end clients too as well. We'll take them to the lab. We have the opportunity to bring a lot of my guys to and girls to University of Nova Southeastern, where we have access to a lab where we can get a DEXA scan done, we can get bone density done, we can get all that taken care of, so that now when we start the process of dieting, we start the process of putting together a nutritional plan, and it helps aid in the process of weight cutting. Yeah. We get a head start on that based upon those numbers. And then if something is going wrong, as in like, okay, they're not sleeping good, right? They're up at night where they can't go to sleep at night, but they feel groggy and brain fog in the morning, and they just can't get up, then that's a cause for concern. You know, obviously we can taper off of their training a little bit, deload them, give them more food if we have the opportunity to do so. But for the most part, if that's consistently going on, and it's not like a, you know, 1 or 2 night type of deal, that's when I want to do a Dutch test to see exactly where their circadian rhythms are. And like, they may have a flip circadian rhythm, which is really bad, where we're going to have to, where basically they're not producing any cortisol, and, or at least they're getting to that point where they are. And we have to back them off the training, feed them, probably pull out of the fight. You know, these things are really big, you know, and it's not just, okay, I had a bad night's sleep. It's more like every day for the next 4 weeks. Now, having that conversation with a fighter isn't the greatest, because they definitely don't want to pull out of a fight, you know, and they definitely don't want to fight because they're not sleeping well. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's deeper than that. It's not just that. It's, you're causing more trauma to the body, overstressing it, and there's a cascade of other things that are going to happen down the line, where you just have metabolic shutdown, your adrenals are suppressed, everything is gone, and now you try to cut weight and your body just like, nope, we got to keep this because we don't know when you're going to eat again. We don't know, like, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of things there. And that's why, you know, you see a lot of guys, especially older fighters, they have to go up in weight class because of it. You know, you got some anomalies like Aldo, who's going down in weight class and he's killing guys, which is crazy. But it's very, very, very seldom. And again, he's not as old as what I'm saying. I'm talking like in your 40s up into your 50s. And that's really where, like, you got to look at health and longevity, as opposed to just like, all right, you know, I need to be good for this one fight in my 20s. You know what I mean? So
imagine that press conference, like you're saying, you know, I really didn't sleep well. I couldn't take the fight. That's just like the worst excuse. Usually people like, you know, ACL, they tear stuff, they break. I
would have them lie about that shit. I'd be like, we got Ursa, we got all types of stuff wrong with us.
So I want to talk a little bit about you as a brand, because you've managed to do a very good job of creating a brand around yourself, right? And I think that's one of the beautiful things that we can do nowadays, where 10 years ago, this wasn't an option, right? If you were a strength and conditioning coach 10 years ago, really most professions, not necessarily just strength and conditioning, a lot of professions, that's what you would be doing. And you would be focusing solely on that. And then maybe, you know, later on you'd grow your business to, I don't know, other things. But now you can create a podcast, you can create a YouTube channel, you can create supplement lines and YouTube tutorials and do interviews. And there's so many opportunities.
Yeah, being everywhere.
For you, do you like that stuff? Yeah. Or if it was up to you, would you focus solely maybe just on being a coach?
Yeah, I get that. Like I wrestle with that, you know, back and forth, because I love training my guys. I love coaching. But I do know that with all the things that I do on the outside of being on the gym floor, like doing this podcast, doing my own podcast, doing the YouTube videos, you know, hopping on calls with other coaches, that allows me to reach a wider audience, to help more people, just the people that step into my gym or the people that, you know, come see me on a regular. And not to say that I don't work hard for those individuals, but it's just spreading out my abilities to help people, And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, now I have the ability to help people worldwide and have a bigger impact. And that's really what I'm accustomed to, like what I want to do from the beginning. I wanted to have a huge impact to help as many people as possible, staying authentic, being myself, and giving myself the opportunity to get in front of these people when now it is readily available because of the internet. So like you said, in the past, people couldn't do that. You had to hop on a plane and somehow they had to see you. Maybe even you had to write a book, things like that.
Yeah.
Still talk to the old school guys. And I say that with the highest respect because these guys are the other guys that I've read, like read books to them, but they come to me now because they want to find out how to get out there in that world.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like I'm humbled. I'm honored that these guys, are coming to me to ask for advice on how to get their name out there. I'm like, I know you, but the thing is, young kids, young coaches, they don't look at that anymore. Mm-hmm. They're looking at individuals like myself, or like, there's a lot of guys on YouTube now that they look up to, and some are good, some are bad. That's the problem. You can't decipher it unless you have an understanding of training, But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change it. I think that this is something that I was meant to do, so I was put on this earth to help individuals get better, so that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah, man. I mean, you do it. I mean, if you look on YouTube, which if anyone looks on YouTube's comments, which are notoriously horrific and bad and trolls, and I've seen a few of your videos and I looked at the comments, and it's overwhelmingly positive, which is extremely rare. Like that doesn't usually happen. And for me, that was just like, wow, you found a way to communicate and connect with your fans that is genuine and authentic. And they appreciate that because, again, you can see the comments. They were all positive, right? And usually people go on YouTube just to write the shitty stuff. Like that's what they do. They love just like, trolling other people. So do you know what you've done, or is just because it's you? Like, do you have, like, if you were able to like sit down?
Yeah, I just stay positive, bro. Like I really don't get into the negative stuff. Even when somebody does ever write something negative, I come back with them in a positive form, in a positive manner.
Yeah.
So I've had guys in the past like, this is stupid, this ain't gonna work. And then I go, well, let's talk about it. Why? And sometimes I'm like, I don't have time to even deal with it, but if they're just misinformed, right? And they're saying stuff because they don't understand the context, I'll take my time and I'll give them the context needed, because that one individual, if I can change the mind of him, I change maybe 5 to 10 other guys that he may be talking to or girls that he's talking to. So I go out of my way there, and usually people are like, you know what, man, I didn't think of it like that. And thank you for taking the time. And that's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
And like, Twitter's synonymous for that. Like Twitter's bad. Twitter's the worst.
Twitter's bad.
Twitter's the worst. But even then I'll be like, you know what, that's good. And I got some of that from even Dustin. Like Dustin, he takes care of it like a champ, like he is, and he just doesn't pay it any mind. I was just like, you don't look too deep into the compliments, and you definitely don't look too deep into the hate that goes with it. So
he flips it.
He does flip it.
Yeah,
he does.
Which is cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's very witty. Like people really don't know this about him. Me and him crack jokes throughout the entire training session. Like my new, like when I have interns come in, they're like, oh, it's Dustin. And like, they're thinking that it's going to be like some very intense, like, don't get me wrong. Like when it's time to put it on, we do it.
Sure.
But very laid back. It's playful because I know what he needs, and I know, but he's very witty, man. He'll come quick. Like he's got it. Like if you give him some opportunities, like he'll get back at you real quick. So it's watch. It's just, I'm gonna tell you now, it's like when he goes into like his fight mode, especially during week, he doesn't want to do any of that. He hates it, Yeah. But when you catch him like in a comfortable environment and he's cracking jokes, man, he can hang with the best of them for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. So bringing up Dustin, we're recording this on fight week. Dustin Poirier is going to be fighting on Saturday. What is it? The 12th, I think?
It will be the 11th.
11th. Okay. And this podcast is going to be released early January. So after the fight, obviously. And obviously you're taking Dustin because that's an obvious one. But how do you see it going down?
Man, people ask me this a lot. I like to see him get it'd be hard, but I like to see him get a submission.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Like he was getting a lot of submission wins in his early career, Now he's just been able to knock people out because his stand-up has gotten so much better. But I just like to see him push the pace on him. He's more physically dominant in a sense, like get him close, get in close quarters, push him against the cage, dirty boxing, maybe take him down, but stand back up. Obviously, you don't want to play around on the ground with that guy.
He's slick on the ground.
Super slick, But the problem is like you kind of judge Dustin's jiu-jitsu off of Khabib, which is ridiculous. Never want to do that with any. It's like, but Dustin's a black belt in jiu-jitsu too as well. And he's a solid black belt, and he's gotten submission wins over good guys, but it's got overlooked by his ability to strike and knock people out. So,
and he was close with Khabib. He had him in that headlock. It was close.
He had a guillotine, and that's he gets that a lot in training against really good guys, that are high level UFC guys. Some champions in other organizations too as well. And like, so it's there. It's just, he just loves to put his hands on people. So, I think it's funny. He said if he gets a knockout, he was going to put my logo on tattoo his logo on his body, or my logo on his body.
Really?
You get a knockout, I'm putting a diamond on my body. So don't do it.
So how do you see? You see it happening? You think submission? What's the prediction? You think knockout in the third? How does it go down? If you had to make a prediction.
I mean, I honestly, in all actuality, I see him knocking him out third or fourth round, somewhere around there, taking it a little bit deeper into the rounds. It's not anything. I don't think it'll get done in the fifth. I think it'll go to decision if it goes to 5 rounds. But third or fourth is usually when he turns it up, and we'll see, man. Let's see how it plays out. But I like to see him, just hit him with a flurry of punches, probably catch him, while they're in exchanges, and then put him away.
Can't wait, man. I'm pumped about the whole card is stacked. I can't wait for Saturday. There was I think there was like a couple of Saturdays ago where there was no UFC fight, and I was just like, oh, what am I supposed to do with my Saturday night? Like, what what's happening?
That happens, yeah.
Dude, thank you so much. This was awesome, man. You've been gracious. You've been going through a tattoo during a majority of this time. Let me see it. Can I see it? Ooh, nice. Oh, that's awesome. That looks
I've done my arm now, so keep it going.
Yeah. Well, you've been super gracious. Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you? Where are the best places?
Instagram is at Daru Strong, Daru Strong. And then my website, darustrong.com, have all my programs, my courses online, things like that. If you ever wanted to get involved with the mentorship, we can do that too. I have an online gym if you can't make it out to my gym in Boca Raton, Florida. And that's pretty much it, man. My Twitter's the same, and my YouTube channel is still Daru. So you just search my name and it'll pop up. Yeah, guys, go check out all his stuff. Man's a legend, probably one of the best in the game. Phil, thank you so much, man. I really appreciated the time today, and I had a lot of fun talking to you. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. All right, take care, buddy.